Joining me now is Stephen Noble Smith. He's running for governor in West Virginia, but it's actually a little bit more than that. It's not just a campaign, it's a movement. And I might be skeptical about that normally, but having read the details of it, no, it's really a movement. He's not playing. And you're gonna wanna take your red bandana and learn about the Battle of Blair Mountain as we talk to Stephen now. Welcome to the Young Turks, Stephen, how you doing?
I'm great, thank you so much for having me on the show.
No problem. So, boy, this is an interesting story. First, let's talk about your opponent before we get into the details of your West Virginia Can't Wait movement and how you're getting other people to run for office while you're running for governor. That's another trip, and a wonderful trip at that. But the current governor is Jim Justice. Is he a Democrat, a Republican, both? What is he?
Neither. Right? So politics in West Virginia is not left versus right. It's the good old boys versus everybody else. And Jim Justice is the quintessential good old boy. He was a Republican his whole life, taking advantage of working people, not paying his bills. He switched to a Democrat to run for governor. He then switched to a Republican after about 6-7 months in office. This guy doesn't have a D or an R next to his name. He has a $sign. And that's exactly what we're up against. We need to fight for a people's government, not just for one governor.
See, Stephen, that's really interesting because even in what people perceive to be deeply red state of West Virginia, and by the way, the reason for that perception is it was the state that gave Trump his second largest margin. Jim Justice switched to become a Democrat to run for office. So his perception was in West Virginia, it's better to pretend it to be a Democrat than to be a Republican. Because the only period where he was a Democrat was when he was running for office. And so that's a fascinating phenomenon. So I guess that leads to the question of, but what do the voters of West Virginia think and want? Because how could they vote for Trump in such big margins, but yet Jim Justice, who's this good old boy, thinks I gotta run as a Democrat to win?
Yeah, so most of what you hear about West Virginia at the national level is just dead wrong. So as popular as the president is in West Virginia, you don't have to just take my word for it, read the polls. Bernie is more popular than Trump in West Virginia. And the only political actors in the state more popular than that are the teachers and school service personnel who went on strike. The West Virginians are not getting more conservative or right wing. We are angry, and that anger is righteous because we've watched people in both parties take advantage of us, steal our wealth and our work, get rich off of our pain. And so that's why this is exactly the place where this kind of revolutionary, populist, bottom-up politics will start. What that looks like is we actually, from the beginning of this campaign, said it is not just our goal to win a governor's office. We don't think that one governor has ever made the kind of difference we need. Never in American history has a politician won the change that we desperately need. Only movements can do that. So what that looks like in West Virginia is we have 55 counties. So in our campaign, we have 55 county teams. Berkeley County can't wait. Kanawha County can't wait. Volunteer teams in each of the 55 counties who have already organized on their own 118 town halls across the state. Additionally, we have constituency teams. So if you're a veteran or a small business owner, or heaven forbid, a person in recovery or a senior citizen, you are not being represented by the government of West Virginia. So we build constituency teams, again, from the beginning. Veterans can't wait, seniors can't wait, students can't wait, which are built not with anybody's name on them, but built to last beyond the election. And it's working because what people want isn't a Democratic solution or a Republican solution. They want to be in charge of their own government, and that's what we're offering.
So, Stephen, there's a lot of organizing going on. I'm going to say behind the scenes in the country because the mainstream media is barely aware of it at all. So, look, it started well before Indivisible did, but Indivisible is one of the more visible, if you will, components of that, and that people could identify because they showed up at the town halls. But our revolution is doing something similar, and then we started doing something similar. And I didn't know about your movement in West Virginia, and there you are. So I'm curious where you got the idea of, hey, while I'm running for governor, I should spend a lot of time, not on my campaign, but on organizing the entire state so they could do it on their own. Where did you get that idea in the first place?
Yeah, so it's not my idea, right? That's the great thing about movements. They don't belong to individual leaders. We have been watching what's happening around the country, and also we looked back to our own history as West Virginians, right? This is a campaign that we're building that is unapologetically pro-labor, and we didn't come up with that on ourselves. We looked back 100 years to the Battle of Blair Mountain, which you mentioned, where Black, white, and immigrant workers, often not even speaking the same language, came together and literally took up arms to defend themselves against coal company rule. And so when we were launching our campaign, we launched our campaign in Matewan, West Virginia, with coal miners. The leaders of our campaign, many of us came out of the teachers' strike movement in West Virginia. I and a handful of other community leaders and parents helped organize a strike fund, but it was watching the people of West Virginia spark a nationwide movement, a worldwide movement that I think reminded a lot of us in West Virginia that the kind of change we need in America happens usually in places like this, where the desperation is the greatest. And I'll just add to this because I'm so proud to be a part of this campaign. Our campaign staff here in West Virginia, made up of these talented, brilliant women from West Virginia, building this infrastructure day in, day out. They became the first union staff, campaign staff in West Virginia history. And it's that kind of history and seeing our race in historical terms. You know, to answer your original question, before we launched the campaign, we did what organizers do. We went out and had half a dozen statewide meetings. We organized 800 one-on-one face-to-face meetings with community leaders across the state, asking the question, what kind of campaign, what would it take for us to build a people's government, not just to get one guy elected? And that's where this structure came from.
God, I love this so much. Okay, so let's talk about the Battle of Blair Mountain just a little bit. You mentioned it there. Tell us why the red bandanas, and then I'm curious as to the conclusion of what happened at the end of that battle.
Right, so the Battle of Blair Mountain is part of the history of the mine wars in West Virginia, where miners were fighting for the right to organize and the right to bring unions, and also just for basic dignity. This was a job where 100 years ago in West Virginia, you were more likely to die on the job if you were a coal miner than if you were a World War I soldier overseas, right? I mean, this was a deadly job that paid nothing and where you were sequestered in camps and given a company script to pay your bills. And it was miners and mine workers and unions that turned that job into a middle-class job with dignity. So we honor that history by wearing red bandanas. And so as you can imagine, miners, Black, white, and immigrant, coming together from across the eastern seaboard in Charleston, West Virginia, to march south and stick up for themselves. And they had to identify themselves. They knew they would be attacked because they had already been attacked numerous times by Baldwin Felts agents, by local sheriffs and law enforcement. So they knew they were going into battle. This was not a usual march or protest. And so they needed a way to identify themselves in battle. And they, if you're a coal miner 100 years ago, you had a red bandana. It helped you in the mines. And so they used the red bandana to identify themselves in the hills of West Virginia and fought what is widely considered to be the bloodiest labor conflict in American history in the hills of West Virginia across racial lines, which of course is the thing that most frightens those in power, is when we come together across race and across religion.
And by the way, those races came together back in the day in West Virginia in 1921. So in a sense, in some ways, in some areas, we were a little bit more united back then than we are now, where Trump is trying to pit all of us against one another. So, which brings me back to Jim Justice. So, I didn't know he was the richest man in West Virginia. So, like, donors used to run things by just giving money to the politicians and then owning them. But a couple of people like Jim Justice have just cut out the middleman. They're like, I'll just buy the state, right? Mm-hmm. So, how did Jim Justice's family get all that money?
The same way a lot of billionaires do, right? Jim Justice is famous in West Virginia for not paying his bills, for not paying his fines, for not paying his workers. This is how you get that much amount of money, is that you are not looking out for everyone. You are looking out for yourself, and you're trying to cut every corner. That's how he got wealthy, and the people of West Virginia are not surprised that that's how he governs as well. But here's the thing, and this is important. This is happening across the country, and it's happening here in West Virginia. Our little campaign, which most people haven't heard of, we have actually outraised Jim Justice and every other candidate for governor combined in this campaign. We've raised more than $400,000 in West Virginia, which is big money here. And we're doing it with small donations. We have more than 4,000 small donations we've received in the campaign already. And Jim Justice has had 13, right? This is how we beat them at their own game, is by refusing to play by their rules. And so if you're watching this and you want to build people power in West Virginia, go to wvcantwait.com and leave your own donation, become a monthly donor, chip in. We can build the kind of governments we want by putting small amounts of money together, because there's so many more of us than there are of them.
Did you say that Jim Justice only has 13 donors?
13 small donations. He has lots of larger donors.
Okay, so 13 donors under $200.
Correct.
I mean, it's just comical, absolutely comical.
Go ahead.
Last question for you, Stephen. What were you doing before running for office?
Yeah, so I spent the last 20 years of my life as an organizer. I organized in Chicago, and then I got to move back home to my home state of West Virginia 7 years ago, where I ran a statewide citizens organization where we took all of the things that West Virginians are good at, the fact that we spend time with our neighbors and charitable giving and volunteer service and military service, and we translated that civic spirit into political victories. The other thing we did is we trained candidates. And so it was natural for us in this campaign to recruit other candidates to run with us. And right now we're at 53 candidates who have all signed a common pledge, the West Virginia Can't Wait pledge, not to take corporate cash, never cross a picket line, never hide from a debate. And we've got people running for city council, magistrate judge, delegate, Senate, Congress, and that's the spirit of this thing, is that the only time things change in America is when a mass group of people come together and take collective action, make collective sacrifice. And so if you're watching this and you think that might be you, reach out to us. We'll find a way for you to be a part of this as well.
I lied. Two more quick questions. You're obviously not taking corporate PAC money, but are you also for single payer?
Yes.
Okay, so that's easy, wvcantwait.com. And then what did Jim Justice do to Richard Ojeda's old seat? Because Ojeda is a little bit of a fire-breathing populist himself, ran for president shortly, and so he gave up a state Senate seat. Who did Jim Justice appoint to that seat?
One of his lobbyist buddies, right? But we can't be surprised. This is the thing. They are telling us who they are, right? And we've got to be who we are and stop trying to convince them or play nice with them. Our job is to go to that Capitol and not try to convince them to do the right thing, but to go up to that Capitol and replace them with us. We need a government where the people who are making the laws are also the people who work the hardest and hurt the most. And until we have that, everything else is just window dressing.
All right, Stephen Noble Smith running for governor in Virginia. We just showed you the links.
West Virginia.
I'm sorry, West Virginia. I couldn't wait.
We fought a war over this, my friend.
Well, you guys fought a lot of wars in West Virginia, so
we know how to fight.
That's right, which I love. So make sure if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook to check out the links down below, because you can donate and volunteer through those links as well. Thank you for joining us and running perhaps the most unique campaign in America today.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.